I have a mild obsession with melody generator plugins, and I've tried a bunch of them. I think they can be genuinely useful tools for getting the creative juices flowing and getting ideas going, even if you're not feeling particularly inspired, and also to get you out of a rut. And if you use them correctly, they don't end up being a crutch, but just a source of a creative spark. And like I said, I've tried a bunch of these over the course of running this channel, and I'm pretty sure I've settled on my favorite. And this video is brought to you by EVAbeat, the makers of Melody Sauce, but that's because I asked them to sponsor this video because I do really like this plugin and wanted to partner with them to bring you this video. Let me actually talk about how I use this in my workflow. This is not meant to just be an ad. This is supposed to be creatively inspiring for you, the viewer, and give you a look at how I use what's kind of my secret weapon at this point. So first of all, let's talk about the tune in the intro. This one was made with a bit of MIDI from Melody Sauce that I barely touched. That's pretty rare, and I'll get to that in a second, but in this case, it spit out something that I was like, that already sounds good, I'm just gonna use it. I think I tweaked like 2 notes total. And from there, I built some chords under it and then worked it into a proper song with a proper drop. There are a lot of cases, however, where Melody Sauce's usefulness is not in that it will generate an entire song idea for you and you don't have to touch it. For me, it's most useful as a generator of little melodic snippets that I can then take and build on and make my own. Often starting from a blank DAW means that you're kind of relying on what you already know about music and can find yourself getting stuck in the same songwriting ruts all the time. And that's what I like these plugins for, is that they break you out of that. They give you a bit of source material to work from, and from that source material, you can create something that is very much your own. Because you're gonna take a little snippet of melody and develop it very differently than someone else will, and very differently than I will. So let's look at another example where I started off with a Melody Sauce snippet that it spit out for me, and then tweaked that until it became something entirely different. But I wouldn't have come up with that without the aid of Melody Sauce. And once again, I ended up developing that into a full track. And finally, let's go a bit more in depth. I'm actually gonna dive into the computer and make something from scratch, walk you around the interface a bit, and so you can see how this plugin works and whether or not it's something that you'd be interested in getting. All right, so I've got the latest version of Melody Sauce pulled up here, and I'm gonna go to one of my kind of go-to settings, which is dark and complex. You've got a ton of aspects that you can tweak here, but I'm gonna leave it on its somewhat default settings. So dark here, complex here. I've got my tempo set to 128 beats per minute. So let's just take this, drag it into a serum that I've already got pulled up, and hear how this sounds right out the gate. So as it is, it's definitely not usable right out the gate, but you can hear it's a pretty competent little songwriter here. So let me try one other, just maybe try both light and dark, kind of a combination between those, and see what that gives me. It's a nice kind of poppy little melody, but let's go back to that first one because I think this could be cool. So maybe that guy right there needs to go. So let's keep that little rhythmic structure going here. And let's actually bring in some kind of proper lead patch to really drive this home here. Maybe that last note needs to go. Same with that. So I'm just kind of paring down what it's given me because the bones of it are pretty good. So and then maybe I might have a bit of a rhythmic switch up in this last section. So something like that. So now I can go ahead and duplicate this patch and build some chords around this to kind of make this make a little bit more sense. Something like... All right, so I went ahead and cleaned up the chord part a bit and then added a clap just for some extra context. So here is what I've got for this kind of little EDM breakdown. Once again, bearing in mind that I changed very little about the melody that Melody Sauce gave me. It was mostly just removing notes and changing timing a little bit. And I would happily put this in a track, genuinely. And I say that because I have put stuff with very similar vibes that Melody Sauce has given me in songs of mine before. It, as you can hopefully see, it actually brings out my musical sensibilities by giving me something to work off of and modify to my own liking. And finally, a couple other things I want to mention. First of all, kind of who is this for and what styles is this good for? It seems like it's primarily meant for kind of EDM and mainstream hip hop producers. So if you're using it for that, I think you're gonna find good results, and it replicates a lot of the kind of melodic styles of those genres quite well. Obviously, I take more of an EDM approach with it. And like I mentioned before, I typically will generate a melody with it and then see where that takes me. One other use case that they've mentioned they like to see people use is have someone write a chord progression first and then generate a melody on top of it. Or you could do the same by making kind of a basic beat and then generate a melody to go on top of it. For me personally, I don't really like to work that way. I much prefer to start with a melody and build a track around it. And that is how this plugin breaks me out of creative block so quickly, is that it gives me melodic snippets to work from. But that's another option. That's another way that you can use it if you want to.